Hi there, welcome to my build of this 65-inch Wingspan Great Plains Trainer 60 or 1.8 metre wingspan. Now, this is a really great set of plans that I downloaded from the AutoZone website. This is second in the series of videos. The first one we had a detailed look at the plans, and there'll be a link to that video in the description below. But suffice to say, these are really nice plans for a really good build plane which has got a good pedigree, so it should fly lovely. And it's very simple, there's nothing complicated in the build, and it'll be good for first time plane builders, and it should produce a really good flyer at the end of it. Before we start actually building this, we need to start creating the components that we need. And one of the nicest things to start with and simplest things is the wing ribs. Now if we look at these plans, we've got a couple of templates. In fact, you could even say there's 3 templates that we can use as a pattern to create those ribs. But we don't want to create them individually, so the best thing we can do, and what I've done, is to cut out the rib, stick that on some plywood, and so we can stick it on some plywood like I've done here. This is for a different plane, and then we can cut that out, sand it to profile it nicely, and then to create a second. And so we have 2 templates made out of 3mm plywood. I've got one there, I've got one there, and in between these templates I've sandwiched, I think it's 22 ribs that we need to create, and the ribs are 3/16 balsa. So I've got 22 pieces of 3/16 balsa sandwiched between here, between the 2 plywood templates, bolted together nice and tight, and I've sanded and planed that to shape. Now I've cut the bird mouth out, and I've still got the cuts, vertical cuts to do for the spars. Now this is a technique I've done a separate video for on a build a while back. If you're interested, have a look in the description below, and there'll be a link to a lot more detailed video of how you can make multiple ribs that are all the same size. It's a lovely technique and it's really rewarding. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is create the fuselage sides. And then once we've got the fuselage sides done, I'm going to put them back to back, make sure, sand them together and make sure they're exactly the same size. And then I think we'll cut the cross formers, A, B, C and the firewall back here, and make sure that we get those to fit the fuselage sides that we've already created. Now, to create these fuselage sides, we need a really long piece of balsa, and I haven't got a piece that long. And they show a long piece of balsa with a join here. Well, I don't have balsa that long, so I've joined 2 pieces of balsa together to give me the overall length, and I'm putting the join here over the wheels, and I'm going to put a doubler in there. Now I've got the pieces of balsa here that I've cut, and these are oversized now, so I've got plenty to play with. That's right up on the nose there, and right down past the tail, need to come to here. That's the wrong way round, of course, because I'm going to have the join over the wheels, as I said. So there's a join, and that's where my doubler is going to be, to make that nice and strong. And that additional weight that I add to do that, which won't be a great deal, is right over the centre of gravity, so it's not something we need to worry about from a balance point of view anyway. Now, to create the fuselage sides, we not only need to have this long side, but we need to have a piece here which creates the top of the fuselage, where the windows are, and also the saddle for the wings to sit on. Just incidentally, when I glued these together, I'll just come back to that in a minute, when I glued these together, first thing I did was make sure that I had a straight edge on my balsa, and I've just cut off a very small amount with a straight edge, because you often find that once balsa's been cut you get a little bit of a warp in it, and I wanted the top, at least the one side, to be dead flat, and yeah, dead flat, so that not only the top piece of balsa on the rear of the fuselage would fit on, but also I need to stick on this top piece here. Now, and also the joint where I've joined the balsa, I don't know whether that can be shown, but it's a diagonal joint, glued it with super glue, just pushed them together really tight, super glued it and sanded it, and that'll produce a really strong join. And the reason I have it at diagonal is to create a larger surface area, so you're gluing more than just butting the two ends up together. Now, this is one of the fuselage sides that I've actually drawn on the actual outline of the fuselage right up to the nose. Hopefully you can see that it's in light pencil. But to do that, I simply measured from this top straight line that we'd cut on the top of the balsa. I then just measured down vertically and just drew this on, ruler and pencil, really easy. Now, to create the extra bit that goes on here, I will show you how I did that, and I just used some tracing paper and pins. So have a look at this little bit of video here, and that'll show you how I did that top. I've drawn out the total length and the uprights, and I've put these lines in. So that shows the basic shape of the back screen, the front windscreen, and now here we need to have the nice curved shape of the rib, so the wing will sit down, so the wing saddle. Now, to get that, I took this piece of tracing paper and just traced the plans, put in the location of these cross pieces, these formers. I think that's B and that's C on the plan, and I'm just lining that up like that. Just weigh that down. Right, now that line is the join line, and this lines up with the two formers, and now all I'm going to do is go along. This is a little bit lower here than I drew because I gave it just a little bit of excess for sanding. And when I'm going to go along with a pin now, and I'm just going to pin this. Let me just start where the former is. I'm going to pin this now just through there, and I'm going to give it a little bit excess on that line because my cut will probably be a little bit, I don't like to use the word rough, but it won't be a finished cut, and it will need sanding. So I'm just leaving a little bit of excess for sanding here for when I come to set the wing saddle with the correct incidence. Now I've got that all pinned through there, so I've left lots of little dots in the balsa so I can remove my tracing paper. I don't know whether those dots will actually show up on the camera, but it's just a case of going through and drawing a line to join the dots, and then I can go along and cut this out. As I said, I've left a little bit of excess on here, so maybe a 32nd, a millimetre, something like that, just to allow me to sand it to the final profile, which I'll do, of course, when as I said earlier, when I fit the wing and get the incidence correct. So there we can see we've got the piece ready to cut out, front screen, back screen, that fits on top of the piece of fuselage I've already made, and that's done now. Actually, I should just say I've done this a little bit taller here and a little bit more of windscreen than there is shown on the plan, and that's because I'm going to have the locking mechanism coming into here, and I haven't worked out exactly how I'm going to do it yet, but I've just given this a bit more height to allow me room to play with the locking mechanism, and we'll see that at a later date. Right, well, I've been really busy with this now, and we're almost at a stage where we can start constructing the fuselage, but not quite yet. You can see we've got the fuselage and the top piece all glued together. I've got both of the fuselage sides back to back. I've labelled them inside, inside, and I've labelled top copy, so I know I'm going to create a pair of fuselage sides, but also which is the one I've sanded to. And I've sanded these now, so we have a nice pair of fuselage sides. Now the next thing to do is to glue on these doublers. This is in the fuel tank bay. I've actually drawn around a section there which I was thinking about lightening to lighten it, but to be honest, it's such a small piece, I'm not sure it'll make a great deal of difference. I calculate it to about 3 grams per side, so I might just leave that. I've got these nose blocks here, or nose cheeks, which just thicken up that nose section so it can be sanded and profiled a little bit more streamlined. I've also got these doublers here are 1/4 inch balsa or 6.4mm. Now I've got this doubler here which is strengthening this join of the two fuselage planks that make up the fuselage side. This is 1/16 1.6mm plywood, and that's going to fit over there like that. On the plans it shows this but being a lot lower, not coming up quite as high, and so it's a strengthener for the landing gear which fits here. So I've kind of just extended that, like I say, to strengthen that joint. And talking of the landing gear, we've got a landing gear plate which just fits on there like that. So let's just put that there, stop it falling over. And this landing gear plate is a nice 1/4 inch 6.4mm light birch ply. Now I've made the formers as well, the cross formers. This is a 1/4 inch balsa, and that just fits in there like that. All this is kind of medium balsa. I've got the firewall, cross former A, and that will just slot into there like that. There's a cover to come on here to cover this, which is removable. And then finally I've got the former B, which goes there. At the moment this is actually in 1/4 inch light ply. On the plans it shows it in balsa, but because I'm going to have a locking mechanism in the top here to hold the wings in, I wanted to have this stronger than just balsa, or it'd pull out. So I'm going to make, as I said, I've made that out of 1/4 inch ply. I am going to cut out a bit to lighten it, which you can see marked on there hopefully. But at the moment I've made this oversized. It's taller than it needs to be, because when I glue the fuselage sides together, this section here is parallel sided. So I will glue these two in, glue in the landing gear plate, but this will allow it to slide in and out so that I can adjust it when I finally sand this, because I haven't sanded the wing saddles yet. Did everything else but not the wing saddles. So that will slide in and out, and I can take a little bit off the bottom to pull it down tight to get the locking mechanism nice and snug. So I'll probably have a dowel going into a hole, and that will just pull it down till it's nice and tight, and then that can be glued into place. Now, but we'll see that when we come to it. Now the only other things I've got to do, I've cut the 3/8 balsa, which sits on the top of the back of the fuselage here, flush with the outside edge, and a piece here that the tailplane sits on. I've also cut some spars, hard balsa spars for the wing, and some of the cap strips. Just get some of those out of the way, easy to do. Now the next thing for me to do is to unbolt these fuselage sides and stick on these pieces onto the side of the fuselage on both sides, on the inside edge, so that then it's all finished and we can start to build the fuselage. Right, well, I've now got the two fuselage sides finished, had them bolted together, sanded them, they are identical. I've also got the doublers glued on, or glued in place. I just put them on the bench, alphatic resin, and weighted those down. You can see I decided to cut that out, that bit of lightning there for that doubler. It was mainly because I wanted to create a shelf to support the fuel tank, and it has lightened it a little bit, not a lot, but it allows me to put that plywood on there just to support the fuel tank. If not, I'd have ended up adding weight, which I really didn't want to do, by putting some 1/4 inch stock down there to support that. So that just seemed a no-brainer, and it won't have weakened that at all. So I've got some 3/8 stock on the top of these fuselage sides here, which is flush with the outside edge. That will not only support the top of the fuselage, rear of the fuselage, but it'll allow, the thickness will allow some profiling there, just to round off those corners. And I've got some 1/4 inch stock on the back here, just to support the tailplane. I've created myself some 1/4 inch triangular stock because I hadn't got any, so I just cut that out of some 1/4 inch sheet and gave it a little bit of a plane. I've created myself some 3/8 stock, which I need for the cross pieces. And as we saw earlier, we've got all the cross formers ready to go. And some of them will have some lightning holes, or access holes to be more correct, done just before I build the fuselage, but I need to think about that a little bit more. So this is all done now. This is ready for me to start pulling this together and constructing the fuselage, which is going to be really exciting, but that is going to be the next video. So I hope you'll join me in that and see how we get on actually building the fuselage, and having a look at also at some of the gear that we've got to install, like the nose wheel landing gear, the fuel tank, and the engine mounts. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and come back and have a look and see how we get on in building the fuselage itself.